Today I will be discussing how strong Yuji is since the manga is now completely done. And I will be receiving some help from this Reddit thread that reminds people that Yuji does indeed stat check the heavy hitters. But before we get into that, let's look at all of Yuji's feats throughout the whole manga. First, let's talk about Yuji's innate physical prowess that has been further honed, granting him superhuman strength, speed, and endurance. His resilience is evident in his ability to withstand powerful attacks and continue fighting. And throughout this whole show, he is probably top 2 when it comes to endurance and taking on physical attacks, basically a human freaking tank. After having his liver obliterated in the Chozo fight, he was still able to tank that and continue fighting. Getting thrown across the map in Shibuya by Yuta also showed how resilient he is, and literally he is second to none. Not to forget that he also tanked Sukuna's slashes like a freaking boss, even landing a huge punch, which just goes to show you how mentally tough he can be. And tough times create tough soldiers, and he is truly a tough soldier. With these tough times, he gained blood manipulation. Through his connection with the Death Womb paintings, particularly Chozo, Yuji gained the ability to manipulate his own blood. This new technique added versatility to his combat style, enabling him to perform techniques such as piercing blood and supernova. And from Shibuya going, Yuji's battle intelligence has completely matured, allowing him to devise and execute complex strategies in the heat of battle. His adaptability and quick thinking have been crucial in overcoming formidable opponents, and his mastery of the Black Flash technique allowed him to deliver consecutive strikes that significantly amplified his physical attacks to the point where Sukuna asked him if he dared to reach his level, which makes him knighted by the god of curses, so it is a pretty big deal. While Sukuna is no longer within him, Yuji's body has been permanently altered due to hosting Sukuna's cursed energy for so long. These changes include superhuman strength and speed, which makes Yuji's physical feats far beyond normal human limits, rivaling and even surpassing top-grade sorcerers. Extreme durability, he is able to endure devastating attacks that would incapacitate most sorcerers. His body has been adapted to withstand intense battles, partly thanks to Sukuna's influence. Improved reflexes and combat instincts, and it is shown that his reflexes are honed to a supernatural level, making him a highly efficient close combat fighter. And one of the many misconceptions people have is that even though Yuji was able to use many of Sukuna's curse techniques, he does not retain Sukuna's specific techniques like Malevolent Shrine or Dismantle and Cleave. However, he does have his own version of those techniques because of his perspective from the New World. There is still some ambiguity regarding whether any lingering connection with Sukuna has left Yuji with unmanifested techniques, but this remains speculative. Now let's get into the meat of potatoes. He for sure does stat check almost every heavy hitter, including Yuta, Maki, and Hikari. When it comes to endurance and strength, the only people that scale above him is probably Sukuna and Gojo. But I've been seeing talks that he is top 3 in the verse when it comes to overall abilities. Let's be real, I do think he could take on Kashimo, Hikari, and Maki with it being a high diff win. And I know many of you don't think he could take on Hikari, but his dismantle technique and would indefinitely stop Hikari's ability to regenerate. But when you start talking about the Kenjaku and Yutas of the world, you must be smoking absolute crack. I'm not saying that they'd smoke him because he would give those two a really hard time, but in the end they would probably still win. And I know a lot of you guys are Yuta haters, but please stop this right now. There is no way that Yuji beats Yuta. No chance in hell. And the user Diamond sums up this battle pretty decently. However, I do have a few gripes, but it's whatever. Yuta wins, but he gets pushed to the upper end of high diff. The issue with this fight is that if Yuta doesn't end it quickly, he loses. And that's because of Yuji's poison blood. If Yuta gets tagged at all, he either is forced to constantly use RCT, draining his reserves, or kill Yuji within the next minute and end the fight. In close quarter combat, it'll be pretty relative even though it's a 2v1 because Yuji just has considerably more impressive hand-to-hand feats. it's hard to put Yuta and Rika definitively above him because the only showings we really have of them are against Sukuna, and Yuji was keeping up more than fine. Important to note that Rika wasn't fully manifested, but it's seriously hard to gauge the difference between partially manifested and fully manifested Rika, because when we did see fully manifested Rika, she got shit on by Ryu. Yuta also can't take Yuji by surprise with cursed speech, as they've swapped bodies before, meaning they'll know each other's tricks, at least the ones they had before the Sukuna fight. Yuta's main win conditions, in my opinion, are Jacob's ladder and sky manipulation, like most of his fights. Sky manipulation is particularly deadly to a predominantly close quarter fighter like Yuji, and while we have seen Yuji tank a Jacob's ladder, that was probably because it was a weaker version that Hana used. I'm not going to touch on the domain clash at all because what we know of Yuji is completely hypothetical, and for all we know, Yuji could also know how to use domain basketball shit, because it's entirely possible Yuta swapped with Gojo first, then Yuji. The only thing that I disagree with him on is the difficulty Yuta will have, but he is correct when it comes to Yuta's hacks abilities, which will be too much for Yuji to overcome, but I'm glad Gege wrote it like this because he was never meant to be the strongest. In the end, the point of JJK was to show that Gojo's ideals that he passed on to his students was stronger than the evil of all curses, even the boogeyman. And yes, Yuji is strong, and I know we all wanted him to be the strongest and maybe even surpass Gojo, but the story didn't call for that. Even though we all thought, man, this dude, he might not live up to expectations, he still managed to crack top 5 when we all thought he wasn't even going to make it to top 10.